great. And hello, and yeah, hello, and welcome to Studio 3. It would be awesome if someone could do me a favour, who's watching, and just put a little comment in the Teams chat to just to let me know that you can hear me okay. It looks like the mic level possibly is a little low, but I can't tell because there's no monitoring back. So if someone could let me know, that would be awesome. And equally, I'll try and keep an eye on the battery levels on this setup here, if I can, because if the batteries go in this mic, then you'll lose me. Everything relies on AA batteries these days, apparently. I'll await some feedback from the collective. Yes, hello. Welcome to Studio 3. I've got some shiny new cameras in here, which is an excellent benefit of Industry Week, and they've got sort of a fisheye vibe going on, which kind of encompasses the whole room. So what I hope you can see right now is me and the entire studio. So what I'll do is kind of go around the studio by way of revision to start with, and then I'll come on to some specifics of the modular and getting back up and running. And I reckon probably I'm going to aim for an hour, perhaps not much more than an hour, just because it's going to get a little dull otherwise. And I'm joined today by Waskles, who is my daughter's best friend, who I have to look after. So she's going to stay up there with me. All right, cool. Someone please comment on the chat just to let me know that you can hear me. I can see that it looks like there are a few folk watching. So yeah, just let me know that you can hear me. Give me some feedback. Oh, hang on, some stuff's happening. Excellent. Hello. Some chat on the YouTubes as well. Awesome. Don't forget, if you want to ask me questions as I go, that's cool. Either way, I've got both chat windows open. I've got I feel like I'm driving a spaceship at the moment. Okay, so the first thing to do is just to revise the setup in the studio, and the focus here is going to be on getting the modular synth hooked up, and getting that kind of up and running. So the first thing I'm going to do is just run through the way the patching works, which I think you can see if I wander around the room. I'll point out some important features of how the patching works. So over here, we've got our utility tie panel. I think it's called tie lines right, or utility tie right, or something on the patch bay. And it's a little dim in here, so you can't quite see these black cables, but there are a couple of guitar cables here going into inputs 5 and 6 on here, because they're 1/4-inch jack, and those come out of the synth down here on the 4/4 listening device. The output is basically anything with 1/4-inch outputs on it, and you can see that if I do this. Look at that. That's that there. The outputs of the device. So that's the output from the synthesizer, and then that will go across to the patch bay, which is here, which I don't have a camera on this part here, but it says here analog utility tie panel right. So I've taken an output here from outputs 5 and 6, which is what's over there, and then those are patched to inputs 1 and 2 on the Focusrite 8 pre, and then that will come up pressing buttons. What am I doing? I'm doing that. That will come up. There we can see on the screen. I hope you can see that. That will come up on inputs 1 and 2. So if I make the synth make a noise, which I can do by doing that, you might be able to hear that. We can see the inputs going into the A pre on inputs 1 and 2. So from there, from there, I'm just using inputs 1 and 2 on Ableton Live and then monitoring back via the Avocet. We could, on the 8 pre, we could set it to monitor directly to the output and bypass Ableton or Logic if you're using Logic. But actually, I prefer to have the DAW there, so if I do something that I like, I can record it immediately. So that's that part of it. So I can make sounds on the synth and I can record them, and I will revise the synth in just a minute so we can review that. And just for completeness sake, in Ableton, there we've got a channel here. Channel 4 happens to be the one that's set to inputs 1 and 2 with monitoring on, and that's where the synth's coming in. Okay. I guess the second thing that I'd want to do would be to control the synth with some sort of MIDI-based device. So there are a number of ways of doing this, and previously, I should look at the camera, shouldn't I? Previously, what we've done is use the TR-08 drum machine, which has got I think it's got MIDI input and it's got a trigger output, and which works fine, but it doesn't really help you if you wanted to write MIDI patterns, for example, on Ableton and then use those to control the synthesizer. So the way I'd recommend doing it is using something that provides a proper MIDI to CV conversion, which we do have a couple of dedicated boxes for that, but the best device is the Mini Brute. Hello. The Mini Brute has got a USB input. Can I pick this up on? No, probably can't. It's got a USB input at the back, which is connected to the computer, and it's got pitch and gate CV outputs at the rear here. They're just labelled up gate CV and pitch CV, and those can go off to the synthesizer. And in Ableton, if we just quickly visit the preferences in Ableton we can see that we have here, in fact it gives us two options on the Mini Brute. We've got that's the Brute itself, so that's that unknown MIDI device that will control the onboard sounds on the Mini Brute, and also output to CV. And then it's because the Mini Brute's also got MIDI on it, you can also use it as a MIDI interface for other MIDI devices, so it can kind of do lots and lots of things. It's a really useful box, is the Mini Brute. So what I'm doing here is sending MIDI off to Mini Brute. I don't know why it's called unknown MIDI device. Maybe that's because I need to restart Ableton or something. So anything that happens here on this MIDI track will disappear off to the Mini Brute, make the Mini Brute make sounds, but it will also trigger gate and CV at the back of the Mini Brute there, which I can plug into the synthesizer. That covers most of it actually. So there's a way of getting sound into the system via those patch panels over there. There's a way of getting MIDI information and CV information out to any devices you happen to be plugged in over here, whatever they are. You can now do both via using the Mini Brute. You can do MIDI, you can do CV, and you can make it make a sound. The final thing is plugging other audio devices into the synth. So over here I've got the Juno, and the Juno is connected via a yellow cable that you can probably see over there. In fact, if I do this, the Juno is connected via a cable here. Look at my bald spot, that's terrible, isn't it? That's the output from the Juno there. That goes into the input of the audio input of the synth up here, and you can then pick that up and play it as you like. In fact, if I have to plug it in, I moved it a minute ago, so now it's not plugged in. So I'm just going to do that. Otherwise, it won't work. All right. Now it's plugged in. I should. There's some chords there. So that sound goes through the modular. That's patched across the modular to the outputs down there, and that goes off to the rest of the system. Okay, so it should theoretically cover most scenarios for you for making sounds with the external gear here, bringing extra stuff in and plugging it in, controlling that stuff via MIDI from something like the Mini Brute or anything else that's got a USB MIDI interface on it, and recording everything that you want to do into the DAW. Okay, so that's the first bit there, is just sort of going through the nuts and bolts of the setup in here by way of revision. Okay. So I hope that's all right. Next thing I want to do is just do a little bit of revision on the modular, because it's the main thing, isn't it? Unless you're coming in here to do some mixing or mastering, the likelihood is that the thing that you're going to do is want to come in and make some sounds for one of your projects. So what I'll do is do some kind of remember how this works, revision stuff on the modular. For the purposes of this, what I'm going to do is, to be honest, I've never really properly established a really good way of teaching anyone how to use this thing, because it's so open and the possibilities are so vast. So, but what I'm going to try and do is for the purposes of sort of clarity, try and establish each module on the modular as either something that makes a sound, or something that processes sound, or something that's there for control, which isn't always the case for all the modules, because it's quite complicated and there's lots and lots of different possibilities with it. But it sort of makes sense to me to think about things as either making a sound, processing a sound, or controlling a sound in some way. So audio sources, audio modifiers, and control sources. Okay, so if I go like this, we can see the synth, and I'm going to, for this bit, I'm going to be picking my camera up and pointing it at different parts of the synth. So if you're looking at this on a big telly, it might get a bit wonky. So apologies if you get a little seasick. And I will, as I said, just try and keep an eye on my battery levels, just in case my voice disappears. And probably should move Waskles out of the way as well, because she's sat in the wrong place. First of all, I'll just clear everything that's on the synth here, so that there's nothing particularly problematic in the way. and then I'll run through this from the perspective of making a sound first of all. Can you still see me? I guess you can. Sort of here. No, I'm here. Hello. I'll run through this from the point of view of making sound first of all, so things that make sounds, and then modifying them, and then processing them. So what makes a sound? Normally, it's an oscillator, right? So the first thing to do is come down here and try and find things that look like they might be oscillators. Oh, look at that quality. Often, as we know, you'll be able to identify oscillators by the fact that they say oscillator on them, or VCO, voltage controlled oscillator. So that one there is a VCO. I might just shift this camera a little so that it's not quite looking at my bald spot anymore. So if you're probably going to knock this over with a chair later on, clumsy as I am. Yeah, I put that right on my chair leg. Never mind. Is that better? Yes, less bald spot in the way. Okay, so yeah, things that make sounds will be identified clearly by if there's a VCO, voltage controlled oscillator on them. So that one's pretty clear. But we also know that things like the noise generator and the Platts oscillator will also make a noise. And there's the Minimod Mugi VCO thingy down there, so that will make a sound as well. And then things like Grandpa and Disting, which can do sample playback. So a few things that make noises. So let's just patch something up that's going to make a noise. Sorry. Excellent. I'm going to connect the Minimod VCO as a sort of classic VCO, and also just to avoid the fact that what I normally do is go straight for the Platts module, just to try and keep things a little interesting. You're looking for outputs. Again, they're not always clearly labelled, but by a process of elimination, you can kind of figure it out. And usually on the oscillator, you've got wave shape outputs. So that one there is a saw wave. And if I plug that straight into the mixer, we can hear it, and hopefully that is going down to the stream. So nice and easy makes a sound. Each module has just different settings to control what the sound source is doing, which isn't really, I'm going to go into it in a huge amount of detail right now, but you know, once you're in front of the thing, you can figure out what the different controls do. Let's do a couple of other sound sources. This one's another VCO, isn't it? And that cable's not long enough, so let's find a longer cable. The constant struggle of using the modular synth is finding cables that are long enough. Knocking the camera. So that's also a VCO. Yikes. That one is as well. Even though the writing's rubbed off, it's the same as that one. Platts we know about, that makes lovely sounds. That's the noise generator. So there's a few things that make sounds. Okay. Now let's think about modifying that sound. The simplest thing that modifies a sound on the synth is an amplifier. So your amplifier's very useful because it controls the volume of sounds, but also because most of the time the amplifiers are voltage controlled, you can control the amplifier with something else, normally an envelope, to make the sound start and stop based on some sort of trigger usually. So the VCA, in some ways most useful one is over here on the modular, the nano VCA, micro VCA. Can't read the micro VCA, but there are a couple of others somewhere. It's been a long time. There's a VCA. There's a VCA. And from memory, this is the bit that's a bit of a sticking point. The bit where you have to figure out where to put your envelope. So let's go through this. So what I'm going to do is connect my VCO to my VCA. It says in on the VCA. Just there, look. It says in A and it says in B. Just about to see that. And then if we connect the output from the VCA off to the output of the synth, and then turn up the dial on the VCA, the level dial on the VCA, we can hear the sound. So the VCA is the volume control, twiddle knob volume control in and of itself, but it can also be controlled from elsewhere. So it's a sound modifier. You take a sound, you put it through the VCA and it can change the volume, but it's also, and this is quite important, it's also able to be controlled from elsewhere. So let's now do that. Typically, you'd use an envelope to control your VCA, and then you'd use another source like a keyboard, like this one, to make the sound start and stop. So let's do that. So here's an envelope. There, an ADSR, a massive arm. So we'll take an output from the envelope, plug it into the CV input on the VCA, and now the envelope will control the volume of the oscillator, but I also need to connect something to the envelope to control when it starts and stops, and typically that will be a gate. Remember, a gate is a kind of on and off signal, and the back of the Mini Brute here, which I think I can probably put on the camera. Is that going to work? Wobbly wobbly. Kind of can see that, yeah. So there's the gate output. It says gate out, there, and that one's CV, pitch CV. So I've got two outputs from the Mini Brute, and what I'm going to do is connect the gate, that one, that cable there, off to the gate input on the envelope. Boop. Now, when I press a key on the keyboard, I love the satellite delay, it's great, isn't it? I press the key on the keyboard. The act of pressing the key generates a gate voltage, which goes off to the envelope, makes the envelope do its thing, so it will go through its attack and decay phase when you press a key, and then sustain. So if I turn up the sustain level on the envelope, sustain for as long as you hold the key, and then when you're done, there's a release time to define how long the envelope stays active after you've pressed the key. And because that's connected to the VCA, that is now controlling the overall volume of the sound. Once again, apologies for making you seasick on the stream there. It's going to fall over, isn't it, Dan? No, it's fine. All right. Okay, so there we've got a sound source, something that modifies the sound source. So a VCO for sound source, something that modifies the sound source, which is an amplifier, and something that modifies the amplifier, something that controls the amplifier, an envelope. The envelope doesn't make a sound. in and of itself, and it's used to control other things. And that little bit there, the bit where you take your envelope and use it to control something else, I think is quite an important one to sort of remember, because you don't typically pass your sound through the envelope. You pass your sound through something else and then use the envelope to control it. Can we get some multi-cables for next year? Yeah, no, I've been using VCV and wishing that we had that option on the modular. And yeah, multi-cables are the like sort of banana plugs, aren't they? Where you've got a socket on the back of the cable and you can stack things up. We've got the multiples on this synth, but it's a pain because you know, they take up rack space and stuff. So yes, for sure, I'll put that on procurement for next year. Okay, so let's look at another couple of modifiers. If I go back to my little close up here, let's look at another couple of modifiers, and then we'll get something happening from the sequencer, so we can see how that works out. I'm not really being particularly imaginative here. The next thing we're going to do is pass my VCO through a filter. There are a number of filters on this synth. There's Cinnamon, which has got a lovely dirty DIY type sound to it. There's Ripples, which is a really nice, clean, multi-type filter, so it's got low pass, band pass on it. This one's got high pass. And then there's the Doepfer VCF. So there's 3 different kinds of filter. We could probably do with some more, couldn't we? Maybe I should see if we can get some more filtery goodness down in the bottom here, because they're really useful. Let's keep this dead simple. What we'll do is pass the VCO through the Ripples filter and then use another envelope to control ripples. So then what we've got is a classic, much like the way the Juno works, a classic synth sound where there's an oscillator, which and a filter and an envelope for the volume and an envelope for the filter cutoff, and then we can build on that sound. The only kind of question mark here is whether we go VCO to VCF to VCA or VCO to VCA to VCF, and in many ways it doesn't really make a difference. But if you're modifying your VCA with a kind of short sound, and then you're modifying your VCF with a short envelope rather, and you're modifying your VCF with a longer one, you might find that the VCF envelope ends up not doing anything because the sound's already gone away. So the classic way of laying out a synth, and the way that this one and that one and lots of soft synths are laid out, is that you connect your sound source first of all to your filter in, and then you connect that to the VCA. So the order of business is VCO, VCF, VCA. And if you're a synth aficionado, you'll recognise that as a classic West Coast, Northeast, and classic East Coast way of doing things, the kind of Moog template. And then what we're going to need is a way of controlling the filter with another envelope. So I'm going to need 2 things here. I'm going to need either one of Cactu's excellent multi-connection cables, or a multiple to split my let's put that down there, to split my gate to 2 envelopes. So envelope 1. I'm such a chaotic worker, sorry. It's just losing everything. I'll edit all this stuff out on the stream. It's going to be great. All right. So just so we remember this, these things here, these multiples here, enable us to split signals up. So that's my gate there, and I'm splitting it to two other things there. And literally, that's all that is just a wire behind there connecting all 5 of those sockets. There's nothing special going on there. And then we can control. That's not a gate. That's a gate over there. What am I doing? There we go. Now we've got 2 envelopes. That get triggered when I press a key on the keyboard. Come on, Dan. There we go. No, it's going to fall over again. It's one of these. You can't see this, but you probably can actually on the smaller picture there. It's one of those little GorillaPod bendy things, and it's become like a toy that's been played with too often. It's all got a bit loose and broken. Okay, so then what we need to do is connect to this second envelope's output off to the filter, and that is the FM input on the filter. If you're not sure which input's what on the filter, just try it out. You can't go wrong. Nothing's going to blow up. You just might not get the results you're expecting. Hopefully now what I can do sounds like a dirty pot, doesn't it? So I can filter my sound. Oh, that's upsetting. Some contact cleaner in there. I can filter the sound, we can hear that happening, but I can also, using this FM control, I can also modify the filter using this envelope down here. So there's one obvious thing that I can't do currently, which is regardless of which key I play on the keyboard, I get a note of the same pitch. Okay, so the next thing to do is connect up the pitch CV from the Micro Brute, Mini Brute, and use that to control the oscillator, and then that will be the last part in this straightforward little patch. And then what I'm going to do is use it to write some sort of musical pattern, and then record that, and then move on to something else. So what was I going to do? Pitch CV. Oh yes. Okay. So pitch CV is the other output from the Mini Brute. That's that one, and that goes. That goes usually to the volt per octave input on the VCO. And if you're using more than one VCO, you would obviously also have to split that via a multiple as well. But what that should do now is give me the ability to play little melodies on my keyboard. Maybe change the octave a bit. Maybe just. I don't know where I'm going with this musically. I've no idea. I'm just gonna make some stuff up. I've kind of had a rough plan to do something along the lines of there's an artist I really like called Barker, who's got is a track of his called Paradise Engineering, where there's loads of lovely pad sounds and lots of bleeps and bloops, and it's also very ambient and lovely. So I was going to try and do something like that, but actually I think I'm just going to improvise and see where we get. So in live, let's see how this works. So what do we do? We do that. So in live, here we've got a channel. Let's stop all these other things. In fact, I don't want to break beat. That's not where I'm going with this. We've got a channel here going out to the Mini Brute, and it's sort of internal MIDI interface there, and then I can create some notes and stuff on here. My laptop's in the way, so let's just do that. How am I doing? Let's just, if I just press the headphones thing there, we can hear how it works. Let's just do. So now we've got some MIDI going on. We can see how all these three things interact. So from the sequencer through a USB cable to the Mini Brute, then off to analog gate and CV here into the synthesizer, where I can control the overall sound. And then that one is my filter envelope. That one is my filter envelope. And then that one is my overall volume envelope. Sounds like a synthesizer. So yeah, the catch is that I mean, we can make lots and lots of sounds on the synth at the same time, but it will get rapidly out of hand. And I think some of you have seen me do this in session, where you end up with the synth covered in cables, and it's a right old mess. So the catch is that you sort of need to know what it is you want to make before you make it, in a way. So you kind of need a good plan for what the sound that is that you're going to make, which I didn't have. So I'm just going to record it and see if it's useful later on. I think it might be a bit of a busy pattern. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it like that actually. A nice kind of muted synth sound. Okay, one other thing to mention here, as what we're about to do is record the sound I've created on the synth into Ableton, is that there will be a latency involved, and it's something that's kind of a constant struggle with this stuff, because well, look at it this way: if we've got a sound being generated in the box, which I have actually, it's a kick drum pattern. There isn't a reason necessarily why those two things will be in time with each other, and the reason for that is that even though we've got a very kind of high-end audio setup in here, there will still be a latency, and the latency happens because it takes a little bit of time for the MIDI generated on the sequencer to be converted on the synth to a control voltage, and then there's a little bit of latency as the audio device processes the audio on the way back in. So there's always a little bit of a delay, and I've not actually tried this yet, but I think we can probably establish what that is. Where if I wanted to record this sound in, let's set this track on record here. I'll just stop the oh, we can see it there, right? The sound coming in is delayed. There's an obvious hang on. There's an obvious delay there, so we need to compensate for that. And funnily enough, it won't help changing Ableton's delay compensation that you can change in the driver. The reason that won't help is because it will also offset the MIDI. I've tried it multiple times. You end up with the same delay because it will shift the MIDI alongside the audio in terms of its delays. It's an irritating quirk of Ableton. So what I'm actually going to do is use the track delay here and pull this back a little until it sounds like it's in time. So we'll get rid of that clip and just get everything playing. I'm just going to earball it for now. That looks a bit better. It's still a little late, but it's okay. And I'm just going to remember what that track delay is. It's 27 milliseconds, which is actually quite an epic amount of delay for such a good quality system. It causes all sorts of issues, sort of in here, in particularly using Ableton. Logic seems a little better at coping with it, but I'm sticking with Ableton for now. Anyway, I've got one sound there. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to make another sound, and we'll look at the synth from much more of a perspective of sound processing. So I hope everyone's still on board, and I hope everyone can still hear me. I'll continue to check for comments and stuff. So in terms of a workflow, in terms of kind of getting work actually done in here, I think for me the best way of doing it is to once you've made a sound, is just sort of clear the board and start again. And you know, we've worked in here previously. You know what happens is you'll go down a rabbit hole and start making sounds, and you'll end up with like an hour's worth of material recorded to somehow kind of make sense of. which is fine. I mean, I'm not discouraging anyone from working like that, but for me, it seems like it's probably better to do things in little chunks, so that, you know, with a limited amount of time, perhaps in the studio, you can walk away with at least something finished. So what I'm going to do now is just clear the synth, and what I'm going to do is use the synth to process some sounds from the Juno. So this is going to involve not just it's great when you get electric shocks off stuff, isn't it? It's not just going to involve kind of modifying the sound as it stands, but we're also going to use this to explore some of the sequencing tools on the Dupfer as well, and on the modular as well, and use that to kind of revise using clock to drive the sequencer forward, and how the sequencer works, which is a little bit of a mystery, or it can be. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the audio from the Juno, and just make sure that I can hear it. And to do that, what I'm going to need is a cable to go from here, which is the output from the audio input processor, and I'm just going to go straight to the output of the system there, just so I know that I can hear it. So audio out is that one, and just going to check in Ableton. I need a new track, so new audio track, external in from 1 and 2. When I press some keys on the synth, I can hear them. What a lovely sounding device. It's obviously limited, the Dupfer, the Juno. It's obviously limited because at the time, in sort of early 80s when this was made, MIDI was really in its infancy, so they didn't usually fit synthesizers with MIDI because it wasn't a thing. It does have a clock input, so you can send it clock and get the arpeggiator on the Juno running in time with everything else. But aside from that, there's not an awful lot of options in terms of hooking it up to a modern sequencer and getting it to work in that way. So there's a couple of things we could do with it to kind of make it work in that way. We could just play it, ideally in time, and that would be fine. But what I'm going to do is process it using a sequenced filter on the modular, which is not something I've actually tried before. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, but we'll give it a go. So the first thing to do, let's get back to our little mini camera. The first thing to do is pass the sound of the Juno through the filter. So that's the Juno there, isn't it? So we'll take that and we'll pass it through ripples. Why not? Because we know that that's all right. And then we'll take that out to the output. So what I should now be able to do, so I'll keep the filter all the way open. Ow! Every time, seriously, every time I stand up I get an electric shock. That can't be good, can it? I'll keep the filter open on the Juno. But I can now, probably should stand a different way. I can now, there we go. I can now filter it using the ripples filter. So I've just got a chord held down there now, pressing the hold button. Okay. Shushes. So I want that to be a sort of rhythmic, pulsing sound, and to make that happen, I'm going to use the sequencer on the modular, and to use the sequencer. So I'm just actually what I'm going to do is quickly find some new batteries for my microphone because it's flashing at me. So what I'm going to do really quickly while I do that, because I sort of saw this coming, is switch a different mic on so you can hear me from elsewhere. And is that working? I don't know. Yeah, maybe. And so while I'm talking, I can just change out this battery. So what we're going to do is use the sequencer on a synthesizer. And first of all, I'll get it running sort of internally. And then after we've got it working and I've got something going on, I'll remind you all how to clock it from an external source. And we're back. That's just flashing like a maniac. No, that's bad. Who's left flat batteries in here? That's rubbish, isn't it? It's a fun game to play. Okay, while I'm doing that, let's flick back to this. I'll try and multitask. So the thing to be able to do with the sequencer is we need to feed it a trigger that's normally a clock source. I feel like I've been left a hilarious booby trap by the denizens of industry. Put the old ones back in and see how we get on. Sorry. We're just probably on a ticking clock here, but we'll press on. And let's just kill that mic because it's probably sounding a bit weird. So yeah, we need to feed it a repeating gate to get it running, and we feed that into the trigger input on the or the clock input on the sequencer. Apart from, as we know, the sequencer is sort of lacking in labelling. The one to remember then is that one, number 3 there. I should probably get a little Sharpie and write it on there. That is the input to make the sequencer step 1 step forward. So every time that receives a gate signal, the sequencer will advance 1 step. And then it's like, well, what do we use? The simplest thing is the simplest thing is to use an LFO. So if I connect up the LFO, make the frequency quite low, and then connect the LFO to the step input, every time the LFO advances, every time the LFO goes through a cycle, the sequence would advance 1 step. And I'm just using the square wave output there from the LFO to act as a gate. In fact, that shape nicely represents what happens when you press a key on a keyboard to generate a gate, or when a clock clocks. It's just a repeating square wave, and that will make the sequencer to go forward. And now what I can do is use the sequencer to somehow control the filter. And there's a couple of options here. What I could do is use the output from the row of controls to modulate the filter. So if I take the output here, it says pre-out, but it doesn't, but it's supposed to. I take the output here from that row of dials and plumb that into my FM input. What I should hear Well, I like that, that's nice. It's quite musical, that. But what if I wanted a little more control over the shape of the sound? It's all very well being able to have a sort of stepped sequence there, but what if I wanted to perhaps do something a little more kind of percussive? Well, what we could use is a VCA, not a VCA. What we could use is an envelope. So we use an envelope to shape the way the filter works. So every step we can trigger an envelope or not trigger an envelope, and then the envelope will control what the filter does. So let's do that. To do this, we need to use one of the trigger rows on the sequencer. This is where things get kind of a little bit interesting. There are 4 switch positions on each step. 1, 2, 3, 4, with the center position being off. The top 3 will output a trigger, which is sort of like a gate, but really, really fast. And then the bottom row will output gate. The catch being that if you join up steps on the bottom row, what you'll get is a gate that lasts for the duration of all those steps put together, which will make the note last quite long. So my favourite approach here is to use the trigger output, and I'm going to use the top trigger output to trigger an envelope. Now the Doepfer envelopes take a gate in, which will work. Let's turn a few of these on. It will work there. You can see it's doing something. But this envelope here, which is the voltage controlled envelope, the Befeco envelope, actually has an option for trigger input, which will make it function a little more reliably as an envelope. It's also got these lovely sliders to control what it's doing. So then I can send that out to my filter, apart from I've got a problem here because I'm already using this this input here from the row of steps on the sequencer to control the filter. Okay, so the filter, like a lot of modules, has got 2 modulation inputs for its primary function, which in this case is filter cutoff. On the oscillators, we can see the primary function is to do with pitch, and we can see here that there are CV1, CV2. There's 2 CV inputs for that as well. The 2 CV inputs on this are labelled Freq and FM. They both control filter cutoff, but one of them's got an attenuator on it, and that's quite common to find modules that have got 2 modulators. One's got an attenuator on it like that, and one hasn't. So I just need to decide whether or not I want the attenuator to relate to the envelope part of it, or to relate to the row of knobs. And I think because these are variable anyway, that red cable there, those can be used to control the frequency based on what these dials are down here. So that will still do its thing. And my envelope here is going to go into the FM input. So the two modulators kind of add to each other in the filter. And so what I'm going to do is set all the dials to 0 and all the switches off, and then use it to make a nice little musical pattern to go along with my bass line I wrote a minute ago. I think it's a bit fast, isn't it? The sequencer is an 8-step sequencer. So if you want to make a pattern that's a bar long in 4/4, you need to run it at an 8th note rate. If you run it at 16th note, it'll be half a bar, which is fine, but there is a way of making the sequencer run at 16 steps, which I can't remember. Wrong envelope. That's quite pleasant, I like it. Okay, so one final piece in the puzzle here, and just being mindful of time, I'll make this the last thing that I do on this, and but what I'll do is leave the Teams thing open there if you want to come and say hi or ask me any questions about anything I've done here. So I'll do one more thing, which is to figure out how we get the sequencer on that in time with the sequencer on Ableton. And most of the question has been answered in terms of how we do that, because I do know, in terms of what's on Ableton, I know that because I've got where's Ableton gone? There it is. Because I've got a MIDI output that's able to go off to the Mini Brute and generate gate. Is what if I made a track with the appropriate delay, 27 seconds early. Let's call this something useful now. I'm just going to try and label my DAW project properly. Let's call it clock, for argument's sake. All I need to do is make a pattern on here, regardless of what the pitch is, that has a note every time I want the sequencer to advance one step. So if I want the sequencer to advance every this isn't going to work, is it? To full disclosure, this is another thing I haven't tried yet. If I want the sequencer to advance on the 8th note, I need a pattern. Let's try and see if it works. I need a pattern that contains 8 notes in a bar. So it will generate that's horrific. I find it interesting how I have ideas of what I want to make, and I've tried a few things out in software of the sort of sounds that I want to make, and then when I come into the studio and kind of run through things, it always ends up sort of sounding a bit the same. So that's something I need to overcome. I don't know how to do it at the moment, but it's so at the moment it is what it is, and it sounds like what it sounds like. And this mic is going to give up the ghost in a second. I hope it lasts long enough. So that clock trigger, okay, will go out to the Mini Brute, and then where's my other camera? And then the Mini Brute clock, Mini Brute gate out will go into the sequencer step input. Actually, that appears to be working. So there we can see the note trigger in Ableton, and there we can see, okay, the camera's lagging, so it's not going to look like it's in time. But there we can see the sequencer stepping forward on the 8th. The catch is that the analog sequencer has absolutely no idea when the bar starts. We're just sending it a trigger. So what we'd have to do is press the reset button, which is that one there, on the first downbeat to make it work in time with everything else. So let's put the audio back in. Lovely. I think what that needs is is a delay. I could apply that on the synthesizer, but that's for another time, I think, and I'll run through that another time. So for now, let's add that to the audio here. Continue working while I do this. If I come over here and play some different notes on the synthesizer, my mic has given up there, so that's probably an indication that I should stop. So let me really quickly recap there. What I've done is there's no envelope on it, is there? what I've done there is kind of recapped everything that we've looked at in previous sessions, from getting everything hooked up, plugging in audio and MIDI sources and stuff, through to the primary kind of functions of each module on the modular synth. So audio processing and control, and then looking at stuff like how you control the whole thing from the DAW. So from playing pitched patterns in and getting CV and gate into the synthesizer, through to controlling the onboard sequencer and having that do stuff to, in this case, an external audio source. Next time, unless I get any kind of indication of sounds that you would like me to make, next time what I'm going to do is kind of look in more detail at some of the fun things that you can make on the synthesizer, again by way of revision, but things like using the Platts module to make interesting sounds, using the Echophon to create kind of wonky tape effects, and using the disting modules to do kind of interesting stuff. So feel free, if you would like to, if anyone's still watching this, I don't know if you are, if you would like to suggest sounds for me to make in these sessions, I'm more than happy to do that, and I can share that sound with you when I'm done. Whether that is just kind of, hey, can you make this noise, or here's an example track, how did that sound get made, and I'll have a go at doing it, or I want specific sounds, like I want, I don't know, a noise sweep as a riser, or a bass drop, or a pattern like this that sounds like Barker, or whatever. Let me know and I will try and make it.